welcome to this week's episode of The Good Guy Drinks Whiskey. Tonight I have a very special guest from Nevada H&C Distilling Company and co-founder of Smoke Wagon Bourbon, Aaron Chepenik. We're going to taste through the core range whiskeys of Smoke Wagon, talk a little bit about each bottle, and then we'll talk a little bit about Aaron's background in whiskey, how he got started, and what got him interested in whiskey in the first place. You can find him either on the Smoke Wagon Whiskey Instagram handle or on his personal Instagram, smokewagon_Aaron. And with that, let me add him to this chat.
How you doing?
I'm doing well. How you doing tonight?
Well, fantastic.
I see you got a cigar there. What are we smoking tonight?
It's a Blackworks Studio Hyena.
All right, and where's that from? What's the region?
Nicaragua.
Oh, nice. Yeah, those are my Nicaraguan cigars are usually my go-to, though I've never had that particular one you're smoking.
They've been crushing it lately, and very consistent.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Sort of like Smoke Wagon Bourbon, right?
Well, thank you.
Yes, absolutely.
So thank you for taking the time to join me tonight. I know you're a busy guy. You've been all over social media, and I appreciate the samples and the whiskey that you guys sent out here to try. I've been a fan of Smoke Wagon Bourbon for a little while now. I've only stuck to your Uncut, Unfiltered version because I tend to like more cask strength bourbons. But I'm very excited to try through some of these. And before we jump in, I just want to get a bit about your background. How did you first become interested in whiskey? Was it at a young age? Like what's kind of the story behind that?
It was not at a young age. It was fairly, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, like, it was fairly recently. I guess now it's been about 11 years. But, as you get older, time has different meaning. So I was, I always drank vodka, really.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was in the bar business, because I just, it's when I tell the story, sometimes I don't, people may not believe me or whatever, but man, it's like I was crazy. I had all this manic energy and I sacrificed everything to get to the point where I was when I opened the bars. And I was like, now is the time. I can finally have, I got my first bar open and then I bought a house and I was like, my life was always kind of uncertain. I was like, okay, everything's okay now. And I just went nuts and I drank so much. And it's not like I was getting wasted because I just burned through it. It was crazy.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden I was like, okay, can't keep doing this forever. gotta mellow out here. And also I wasn't really having any fun anymore. Like the world had changed. I had changed. I'd gotten older. And so the age difference between me and the average bar customer was rapidly growing. And so I just tried I was like, I want to drink something that I enjoy.
Yeah.
Versus like what's the easiest thing for me to just put away.
Yeah.
And I tried everything, and I just loved bourbon and rye. They are my favorites.
Yeah. Well, they do say that once you learn to appreciate whiskey, once you hit the age of wisdom. So it just took you a little bit of time, but you got there, and you're enjoying it now. And so was there a bourbon that really kind of clicked with you? That's like, oh, this is the game changer right here. This is something that I really want to kind of pursue.
Oh, Four Roses single barrel.
Okay. Yeah.
Which I just had again last night for the first time in forever. Usually I never go anywhere that doesn't have my brand because I'm always out doing account support and things like that. But I was like, oh shit, they have it. So, and it was also, they had a very small. When you're in Las Vegas and you see a small bourbon menu, it means everything's corporate compliant. Like they basically, that corporate compliant, for people who don't know, that means there has to be a specific profit margin. And to get to that profit margin means they basically get shit for free with the expectation that from the supplier that it's like marketing dollars. Like people are going to go to this fancy restaurant and have this experience. And when they go back home, they're going to be like, oh, remember when we had those steaks and blah, 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 we drank, we should get a bottle of that. And But anyhow, yeah, and so that was when we went to MGP, and they're like, "What do you like?" And I said, "Oh, four rows of single barrel, 35% rye," and they were like, "We have 36." And so that was not a popular mash bill back then.
No, no, yeah, I can imagine. So you got your the dibs on that exact mash bill, which has turned out to be quite popular for you. So that's to your benefit. So with that, let's. I'm going to jump into the first one, which is just a straight bourbon whiskey, which is your entry level core range, right? And this, if I'm understanding, was your very first release too. Just a straight bourbon whiskey.
No, small batch was the first.
Oh, the small batch was the first release.
Yeah,
All right.
it was small batch, then uncut, unfiltered, then Desert Jewel, then the private barrels, and
Okay.
so it just kept getting more expensive
Yeah.
and more premium, and everybody was like, "What are you going to do next? Super double extra premium, or finished?" Actually, there was a lot of pressure to do finished bourbons,
Mm.
and I said, "No, I'm just going to do. I want to do an entry level."
Yeah.
That retails, it's hard to talk. I'm not supposed to talk about price point, but I mean, theoretically, I want it to retail in the low 30s and be really good.
Yeah.
I just felt like everything was getting weirder and more expensive and less accessible, both in flavor profile and general attainability. And I wanted to have something, because I just felt like all these entry levels, it was kind of, they all had like a bad reputation where, oh, don't try the entry level, you got to go up to
Mm-hmm.
experience what the brand's really like. And I
Yeah.
was like, well, that doesn't really make any sense. I always use like skill based stuff. Like if you're buying a motorcycle and you buy
Mm-hmm.
the entry level of a brand, it's a giant heap of shit. You're not gonna want to get like the next one. You're gonna be like, oh, that was the brand that I used when I didn't, when I didn't know how to ride, and so now that I know how to ride, I'm gonna get this other
Yeah.
brand. And so I wanted to be something that had our flavor profile to some degree. So made sure it's 36% rye, which is an expensive mash bill.
Mm-hmm.
92.5 proof, so it's not chill filtered, and yeah, so it just couldn't be in a custom bottle, and it's won two double golds and a gold, and I'm happier with that than like I don't even submit rare and limiteds for medals or anything, because like what's the
Yeah.
fucking point, Hey, we got 30 double golds this year. I wear them on my jacket, like. If people are like, oh, what? Like all this stuff you can't get.
Yeah.
so,
Exactly.
so I'd rather
Exactly.
be the thing that everybody can get, and yeah. So that was. I'm very happy with how that turned out.
Yeah, absolutely. And just sipping on it here, I come from mostly a Scotch drinking background, so I usually stay away from entry level bourbons because they're just not very interesting to me. They're kind of flat, a little simple, a little too one dimensional. And you're trying to target a market in a segment in the market that is kind of left alone. So that makes so much sense to kind of dive into that with an affordable, well-made bourbon that's approachable that everybody can reach out to. So that makes a whole lot of sense.
And it's funny, because like when I let the when to have it be accessible, yes, it might not be complex enough for somebody, but I don't think anyone's going to
Yeah.
try that. There shouldn't be any flavors that are bad. It might just not be hot enough or complex enough. But the irony is when you let non-seasoned bourbon drinkers try all the expressions, they think that's the most expensive
Yeah.
because
Interesting.
it's the smoothest,
Yeah.
and so that's what they associate premium with, is like ease of drinking. And like, well, when you really get into it, you want more flavors, you want more, but yeah, it's funny.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so with your straight bourbon, do you know what the general formula is behind it? Are you looking for consistency from release to release?
Oh yeah, just a lot of fruit, a lot of candy, no oak,
Yeah.
you know, just very, very, very light, delicate, easy sipping. Very, most people who aren't, and then drink, even though, because look, when you look at these people that really aren't into bourbon or whatever, and you're trying to win them over, and maybe their only experiences other entry levels that are 80 proof. They look at 92.5 proof like, oh my god. Well, like for us, we're like, people are like, oh, it's only 92.5 proof, and so not being chill filtered, I want it. It's easy to make it soft because the lipid esters, the fats, are going to insulate your palate from the heat, and yeah. So just those are the goals. Just have it be delicate and
I think you definitely accomplished that. This was my first dram of the night. Usually I start off with something soft, and this wasn't too spicy. And you can taste it's a younger bourbon for sure, but it's very pleasant and enjoyable. So I can definitely see why this is winning awards in the whiskey competitions.
I just don't want to have any of that vegetative graininess, Try to avoid that. And so
yeah, definitely.
So I guess your first release was the small batch, which we'll get to right here. So what was the kind of before small batch came? What was like the thought process behind I want to start a whiskey bottling company? How did you come up with that?
Well, originally we were going to distill everything.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we had to rip out the firm. I mean, first of all, pardon me. There's so many factors. Because you pay these people to fucking just feed you all this bullshit, and give you no one's going to tell you how hard it is because they want your money. And they're like, look, you really shouldn't do this because you're probably not going to succeed. And they lie about how much money it's going to cost to do it, But what happened, and so there's no way we could be where we are if we were distilling the way we had planned. With a 250-gallon still and 5 250-gallon fermenters. There's just no way. It's a barrel a day. But so two things happened. One, we went to MGP and for the first time because when I started, I did not know you could buy source bourbon. I didn't know that it existed. And when I was told, I was like, what? What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Let's go. Let's check it out. And that was a very eye-opening experience. Boy, I'm really getting away from what you asked me. So in the beginning...
No, this is good.
Yeah, so in the beginning, I was all bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and I was like, I'm going to learn how to distill, and I want to be the best distiller ever, and da-da-da-da-da. And then we went to MGP, and I was like, what the fuck, man? Because that's the Seagram's plant. And now it's the Seagram's and the... Old Quaker. Old Quaker's been around since the 1800s, and the Seagram's aspects have been around since a week after Prohibition ended. So there's all these like buildings, and the rack houses are masonry, and you're like, you can't build this shit anymore. And there's grain trucks lined up, and I'm just like, yes, and we have 3 types of power sources for our still, depending on what's the cheapest, and and this is how Seagram's built the rack houses to ensure they'd be humid, and it's on this side of the Ohio River to get all the mist. I'm like, I'm in Las Vegas, we have 0 humidity, And then it's just like, how do you scale to this? What? It's 20 acres. We've got a 3,900 square foot spot, So the original plan was, we bought these 200 5-year barrels, the last of the Seagram's barrels, and some stuff like 700 barrels or maybe 4 or 5 months old. Oh, there's a comment. I couldn't. Oh, there we go. So we were originally going to dump. We're still going to distill ourselves. So we're going to dump that 5-year into these big tanks.
Yeah.
Until our stuff came of age, and then the city never approved the tanks.
Mm-hmm.
And then so much time went on trying to get the tanks approved, and all of a sudden that new distillate we bought was going to be 4 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And so all these experts that we hired were like, oh yeah, you can just blend because now the 5-year was 8-year, and they're like, oh, you can just blend. So all right, tanks are out. We're just going to blend them to make it taste like 5-year. And I did it the way everybody told me, and it was like, what? It was terrible. I was like, this is not good. These guys are out of your mind. And so spent. It's funny because back then it was only 8 and 4 year. That's all I had,
Yeah.
and it took me 3 days. I have the pictures. It was 3 full days of blending.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden, I got to this flavor profile where I was like, man, I really like this. Because I didn't know what the fuck I was doing.
Yeah.
I was going off of like a percentage basis that these experts told me to do that was terrible.
Yeah.
And, and so I had to figure it out. I just did it all based on what I liked. And then my business partner, Jonathan, was out of town.
Mm-hmm.
He was in LA, and I was like, hey, when are you going to be back to Las Vegas? I need you to try this because I think I'm onto something here. And he tried it, and he was like, wow, this is really good. And we both liked it better than the 8 year and liked it better than the what we could remember the 5 year tasting like.
Yeah.
And so, initially small batch was going to be a 5 year, and then it was supposed to be released as an 8 year and then stepped down to a 5 year and ended up being this proprietary vintage blend. And all these experts were like, you don't want to do that. Just make it 4 years in a day if you're going to do anything and put your 8 year in a bottle that says 8 year. And I was just like, well, then what the fuck are we doing? We're not creating anything. We're just putting shit in a bottle. There's no creativity here. And I feel like this tastes better. So I feel like I'm bringing something new to the market. And, it's like, this is what we want to do. And then the state said, hey, by the way, now that your tanks aren't part of the equation and you're getting your licensing, you want to be a rectifier or a craft distiller. And when we started, you could distill as a rectifier. And we were like, we want to be a rectifier and distill. And like, oh, you can't do that anymore. And so at this point, somebody had started distilling in Las Vegas, and they were getting 48% volume loss the first year. So now we know the experiment of distilling in low humidity area. You lose everything. You make balsamic vinegar bourbon. It's like Tuscany, Yeah. Put your shit in a barrel and let it all evaporate, and you get some sludge in a few years. so we're like, man, this is it. This is what we're doing. Because we had already started contract distilling with MGP. At that time, we were the only small brand doing it. And just out of like a whim, somebody said, you should see if they should do it. And we asked them because it's taking so long to get open. And so it was just like the writing was on the wall, and this is what we were doing. And so we just told everybody to fuck off and just did it how we wanted, And it's funny because back then when I put distilled in Indiana on the back label, nobody was doing that.
Yeah.
And that because the TTP wasn't enforcing it. And then once they started enforcing it, everybody switched to straight bourbons. And so they would just buy, and then they could tell their lies again about how they're, named their still Mildred, and they were distilling their own, and you couldn't tell because it's a blend of straight bourbons with no state of distillation.
Yeah.
And then even like a couple years ago, like people are like, oh my God, distilled in Indiana is so small. I'm like, it's literally the same size font as our address. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Sorry that's not enough for you, but it was tough, man.
Oh yeah.
It was tough doing tastings and events and people seeing distilled in Indiana like, oh, you're just sourcing. Yeah. And I was like, well, there's a lot of aspects to it, and but I was like, look, if you like the flavor profile and you have a problem that it's sourced, then go buy something else.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna. It's just how it is. If you don't like the way this tastes, then that's fine. I can't change it. I like the way it tastes. So if you don't, then hey, we're on different pages here. But if you like it and think it's better than something else, and you're just not gonna buy it because it's sourced, and don't understand the blending or the aging process or anything, then that's cool, man. It's not for you.
Yeah,
Instagram.
Exactly. And one of the great things about Smoke Wagon in general is the transparency. There's a batch on the back of your bottle, and if you want to know exactly what barrels you selected and your thought process going through it, you can just watch one of your videos on Instagram or find that information somewhere. So that is one of the best parts, and one of the coolest things is the transparency.
Somebody, the comment that's pinned about the experimental rye, I did not. That was not me. That was all MGP. That was Sam, the master blender at MGP. Those were on the rye inventory when I started buying rye barrels, and I did not know what they were. I just saw that back then they were 7, and then 8 years old when I bought them, and I let them age in Nevada for a year. And I didn't know what they were until they showed up.
Yeah.
And they had all these pieces of paper stapled to the barrel heads and all the char codes and everything. And I had to reach out to Sam, the master blender, and be like, hey, man, what's the story with these? And that was their first distillation run of that 49% malted barley, 51% rye. And then they took those 22 barrels and had them all experimentally charred.
Yeah.
So I can't take credit for that. All I can take credit for is letting them age here for a year and then batching them as opposed to doing single barrel.
Yeah, and I know there's definitely a lot of people up in the Northeast where I am who are looking forward to trying some of these new ryes that you guys are coming out with soon. So back to the small batch. The original conception was a blend between 8 and 4 year. Today, how has that small batch changed, or has it changed at all?
A ton.
All right.
Everything's changed because in the beginning, I was under the assumption, like a lot of people, old is good, young is bad.
Yeah.
Which is not real. I can give you a 4, and that's I'll try not to digress too much, but sometimes I just touch the band a little bit.
Yeah,
it's like people will complain about Uncut, Unfiltered sometimes. They're like, oh, it's just all young juice. I'm like, you're literally complaining about the batches that have no young juice. I put no young juice, and they don't. And so anything that's like harsh, they think it's youth, and they don't understand that that's oak. It's tannins, what they're tasting.
Yeah.
And so I've really learned that it's a delicate balance between, especially with something like small batch or even uncut or filtered, but small batch particularly, where I'm trying to achieve a specific flavor profile where it's fruit forward, but it's got enough spice and complexity on the finish where like it stands up in a cocktail, or if you have it on the rocks, which I do in the summertime, it doesn't become watery and one-dimensional.
Yeah.
I used to go a little too much, like we're out of the bottle. It was almost like a little harsh, and I've made it softer because I've learned so much about blending.
Yeah.
But yeah, now I usually don't go older than 7 currently, because the 8 years I had were so oaky that I would have to go too young to knock down the oak, and then it would get it wasn't really, it was a little too thin. It wasn't really where I wanted it to be. So
Yeah.
But everything's always changing.
Oh yeah.
Like there is no, the path to get there is always different, because 90% of my barrels are racked. And so it's all coming from different locations and different warehouses and different levels. And so there'll be times where, my 7-year second floor.
Yeah.
Well, my 7-year second floor, there's no oak. It's all like fruit and caramel and like soft and maybe even a little too young. And I might have to like pump up the 4-year off the 6th floor to bring in the oak and to bring in some, So, yeah, it's just that's why I love it, because it's always changing. There's always a challenge.
Yeah, and I think as a whiskey enthusiast or any whiskey drinker out there, they appreciate the subtle differences as you progress through the years, because drinking the same thing would get boring after a while. So you want to have something unique. You want to bring something new to the table. Sometimes it'll be more interesting than you expected. Sometimes not quite as good as the last one, but it's always changing and evolving. And I think that's one of the best parts about consuming whiskey in general, is just the journey it takes you on.
Yeah, even small batch is impossible to, at the level we do it on, and the fact that nothing is chill filtered or charcoal filtered or anything, it's impossible to make it completely consistent.
Yeah.
But I think it's always, small batch especially, is always in the same vein.
Yeah.
It's always you can always be fruit forward, and it may not taste exactly the same batch to batch, but you know what you're going to get.
Yeah.
When you talk about cigars, it's like you can't expect every cigar to be exactly the same, because it's an organic thing. You deal with plants, and they're all going to be different. And so I have no expectations of anything, just as long as it's good, and kind of has the flavor profile that I'm looking for. And so that small batches, that's what small batches.
Yeah, especially when it comes to Cuban cigars, which have the worst quality control in the world.
Yes.
You
You
know,
got to get a box. You
yeah,
got 3 that aren't plugged.
Exactly, exactly. It's very inconsistent. Now you said that the evaporation rate is fast in Nevada. So how long do you usually or how long do you typically age the whiskey in Nevada?
It all varies, but I'd say on average 3 months, 3 to 4 months.
okay, all right.
And in the summertime, stuff will change in 3 weeks. Like,
Oh
no
wow,
joke.
yeah,
I'll have things that the biggest example, the 4 years, especially because there's so much contact with the wood. So if some come in and they're just not ready, we'll fill a tank with it, and just slowly pull off that tank, but let the rest of the barrels just rest. It'll
yeah,
change very fast. Another big example is I'm pretty sure it was an experimental laydown. They put barrels on a sub basement of warehouse E. And
hmm,
the last Donald Snyder, who was the warehouse manager when I first went to MGP in 2012, he said they never use the sub basements anymore. And so when I said, "Hey man, like I just got these and they're ES, what's S?" And he's like, "That's sub basement." I was like, "I
hmm,
didn't think they use it." Well, let me tell you something. Those things don't age for shit, man.
yeah,
But they do evaporate.
yeah,
So, and they really go down in proof because it's so humid down there. So we pulled like 60 of those and let them age here.
yeah.
And within about 3 or 4 months, they were beautiful.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's interesting how that works. Because you think of Scotch whiskey and aging, where you have those dunnage warehouses. They're only stacked 2 or 3 high. They're close to the ground. It's cool. It's damp, and it just makes sense that that's why Scotch needs so much time to age because of that very slow interaction with the wood.
Well, yeah, and it's in a used barrel. And I
Hmm.
and I lived in Scotland. It's like
Oh really?
58 in the summer
Yeah,
and it's 38 in the winter. It was rarely below freezing, when you at least on the North Sea because of the Gulf of Mexico,
yeah,
and it so it's not a lot of temperature variation. I mean, even in Indiana, I mean, they sub-zero winters and it could be 100 degrees in the summertime. So it's
yeah.
a lot of movement.
Now, do you like Scotch whiskey too, or are you just all bourbon?
I'm all bourbon. I think a Scotch now is you're getting more Scotches that aren't caramel colored and aren't
Yeah,
flavored, and I've started, but because I do love malted barley,
yeah.
so
Yeah, well, maybe one of the if you're interested, one of these times I'll have to send you some samples from my shelf back here, and we can jump on Instagram Live and do a little Scotch tasting. But we can save that for we'll save that for down the road. Um, so obviously MGP sourcing bottles are very common in the marketplace today. How do you differentiate your MGP bourbon from one of your competitors?
it's all. Well, I can tell you that a lot of it is location
Hmm.
because we've been contract distilling them for so long, and I'm one of the few that can specify side filled racked.
Okay.
Now we've gotten to the point where I can't anymore because we do too many.
Yeah.
Um, and and so I had, and then my warehouse knowledge,
Hmm.
and then, but I really think, and maybe other people have started doing it, but not that I know of. We separate everything. I do not do like if I'm doing an uncut and filtered, I don't try barrels and then dump them into the thing.
Yeah.
We take each location a barrel and dump it into its own tank. And then I have
Yeah.
all these tanks. And even if straight or Uncut the Younger, that's only 4 year, I'll be working off of 6 different tanks because it's 6 different locations of 4 year. And that's another thing that differentiates us is our inventory now is so huge.
Yeah.
And it's going to get bigger. I mean,
Hmm.
I know what our contract is with them, and I know what our inventory is, and I know where I rank as far as their customers.
Yeah.
And it's like we're there with Diageo, we're there with Pernod Ricard, and we're especially in 3 years.
Hmm.
um and so yeah, the blending and even to some degree aging, because I can get things to change here, but that's not always the case. There's times where it's just, stuff shows up and I can figure out the blend the way it is. But yeah, the blending and the knowledge of the warehouse locations and the fact that everything we do is the flavor profile is just specifically dialed in.
Yeah.
Through blending, even straight. I'll have 6 different tanks, and I'll be like, okay, this 4 years, okay, we'll only go like sometimes it's 2 or 3%,
Yeah.
and so that, and then it's always me, and I'm very anal and obsessive about getting it right, which is that's the thing. Like when people, if anybody like talks shit about the brand, I'm like, look, even I just did a video. I don't know if it posted because I tried posting it and then we went live, so it might be kind of hung up. We're gonna do 26 runs of the Halloween bottles, the glow in the dark Halloween bottles.
Yeah.
So I got to really plan that. That's a lot of fucking barrels, and we can only have like 200 on hand at any given time.
Yeah.
And so that's like 7,500 cases, 6-packs. Well, we couldn't get there because just these ones that are 4 years and 11 months old, they just weren't cutting it. And I figured they're almost 5 years old. Maybe we could probably do 35% of those combined. And I only went 16%. So we ran out of juice after like 22 runs, and there's just no more time. And so it's like, even like it's something, entry level, a fun, gimmicky holiday bottle, I'm not going to compromise on anything.
Yeah.
And I don't care what it is. And so, if anybody talks shit or whatever, I'm like, hey man, I literally do the best that I can. Nothing's gone out the door that I wasn't proud of. And if somebody doesn't like it, I'm just like, I liked it. I don't know. Maybe our palates are different or whatever, but that was not a compromise for me. I love it. Say you don't like, I love. And, so.
Yeah, I mean, you can't expect to please everybody in the whiskey world. I mean, I'm lucky enough to enjoy all types of whiskey. I know you had an Instagram live a few weeks ago with Damon from VA Bourbon Hunter. I tried to get him into a Scotch whiskey just a little bit. I sent him some samples. We did an Instagram live, and it was a failure. He liked one of them, all right, but that's just his palate, his preference. So you can't expect to please everybody. And I did like your reel that you posted about the somebody making a comment about the Halloween bottles and how you're just like, all right, you know what I'm gonna do? We're just gonna go over. That was a pretty cool video. Yeah, but I mean, I think if
shit's fun, have a good time. It's like, it's the entry level bourbon. It's not like I'm taking Uncut and turning it into a collector's item. It's just like, bourbon that retails for around $30. Just buy it and go to a party, No, it's a Halloween party. You got Halloween bottles. I mean, for me in the bar business, especially in Vegas, Halloween's the busiest night by far. Way more. Like New Year's, people will be at home or whatever, but everybody goes out. Everybody gets crazy on Halloween, and so it's just it's like, I hate to tell these people, but not everybody's a miserable, pretentious asshole sitting in their basement, like being miserable and precious. Some people are out being social and going to their friend's house, and they want to bring something for the party they're going to and have it be themed the way the party is,
Yeah. And it's not like you're doubling the price for the same product. I mean, it's just something fun for the holiday. And as long as you take pride in the whiskey inside the bottle, I mean, I think that's the most important thing. And the quality hasn't changed. So, you just have
and usually it's the opposite. Usually, like the holiday stuff, I try to do more so that everybody gets it and gets it for a good price. And so if somebody is overcharging, like, they can get it somewhere else, or we'll do a lot online or whatever. So yeah, it's it's all good time.
Yeah, and speaking of special bottles, Brian Heiser is asking what the Smoke Wagon bottle is with the light blue medallion.
If you know off the top of your head.
Oh, Desert Jewel? Probably Desert Jewel is what he's talking about. That's my favorite bottle. Not my favorite content, but my favorite design, for sure. Because state colors. Yeah, that we did in 2017. That's funny, man. People are like, you ever going to do that again? I'm like, well, let me tell you the story of that. I had 35 barrels that were 10 years old on the 4th floor of Warehouse G, and they're starting to get a little oaky. And so I pulled them and did that. I don't think I'll ever have a situation where I have 35 barrels. Like, what do I do with these? I gotta. We go through like 100 a week now,
Yeah.
you know. So,
Yeah.
but I would like to do it again. You know, I mean, that's the thing. It's like I have no desire to sell out. I love doing it, and all of our plans are long-term plans, and so yeah, it'll be back for sure.
Yeah.
It's awesome, and it's good to have those special releases come out from time to time, just to differentiate, have something a little bit different from your core range. And speaking of which, you mentioned.
Ryan, did you get to try it Too Hot for Retail? The Too Hot for Retail, that's insane. That was like a barrel that I had aged here for over 3 years, and it turned into, I wouldn't call it balsamic vinegar sludge, but it's like, it is so thick but it tastes like maple syrup, and it is we only got 6 cases out of the barrel.
Yeah.
And it's so thick. It's 141 proof, and it tastes like nothing.
Yeah.
Because it's so creamy that you can't access the heat. It's a trip.
Yeah, that does sound like quite the unique bourbon drinking experience.
Yeah, so that one we do for charities only. Like some of the super rare stuff I put aside for charity auctions only, because I just know that when you have 6 cases, no one's going to get it.
Yeah.
And so it'll just go to secondary or whatever. And so if it's going to go for big money, it might as well, serve a good cause. And so that's what we save those for.
Yeah, I mean, and that's great too, because I mean, the allocated bourbon market is a challenge for everybody. I mean, that's one of the barriers to entry to really kind of dive into more unique bourbons. So it's good that you're still releasing your core range on a regular basis, so those don't enter that allocated realm.
Yeah, and even Uncut, we do more of that than we've ever done. It's funny. It's like the haters on that have to get together, because one side's like, I can't believe you're doing so many batches a month. And the other side's like, when Uncut the Younger came out, they're like, oh, you don't have any more old barrels, and so you're just scaling back your old stuff. I'm like, well, which one is it, guys? Am I doing too much of it? Or not enough.
Yeah, you can't satisfy everybody. If the bottles you're selling, you're in the right direction. But speaking of Uncut the Younger, that's the next one I've got right here. So this is a relatively new release, right?
Right. And
yes, very new.
And what was the reason for creating this one? What was the intention for this segment of the whiskey market?
Sort of the same philosophy. The only real complaint that I got about the entry level straight was that it was too low proof.
Yeah.
And even like when I did 100 proof version of it for a bar for cocktails, like this one group I follow online on Facebook, they're like, everything is so good except for straight. That one's not very good. And then they got straight at 100 proof and like, this is what bourbon should be. I'm sorry, guys. It's just in a different bottle, and it's just straight. But yeah, so I just I wanted to do a cask strength affordable bourbon that was really like entry level, but and even I do change the blend, like, because there was one I can get oak out of 4-year, like we were talking about before, and I let someone at the distillery try it, and she was like, ooh, I don't know if I like this one, and I really liked it, and I was like, you know what though, you're right, because it's too it's too complex. It needs to be fruitier and softer and have more candy. And so I scaled back like the high level 4-year to achieve that, because I wanted to have that flavor profile.
Yeah.
And right now it's kind of limited, because the irony of everything is I don't have the young barrels yet. I have the old barrels, but starting in, all of our massive laydowns start coming of age in like starting in May and June, and then it just gets crazy. And so we'll really be able to crank this out. And I love it. And the thing is, when I finally knew that I achieved my goal of being well-rounded and having a real brand, it just kind of happened recently. I was in New York, and I was doing a bottle signing, and one was probably earlier than it should have been. And so nobody could really get off work, but it was in a
Yeah.
high traffic liquor store.
Yeah.
People didn't know who I was. They never heard of the brand, but everyone bought something.
Yeah.
No one that came up to my table walked away with nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And that was when I knew that, okay, whether it was straight, people were like, this is only, $42 and it's cast strength, or small batch. Like one woman bought like a 6-pack of small batch. You couldn't believe how cheap it was. And or uncut unfiltered for, like, people are really into bourbon, like, wow, this is so complex and amazing. And so that's when I was like, okay, because when you have all initially in 2020 2021, when there's all this hype, you got to the fear is the backlash, and just want to pass through it.
Mm-hmm.
and get to being real.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it's like when people talk shit about it or whatever, it's like, I don't know, dude. I mean, affordable cast strength bourbon seems like a good idea to me, because there isn't one. There's nothing that retails for this. And starting in June, when we can do as much of this as straight, and it'll be everywhere, and nobody will overcharge for it, and you'll be able to get it for that affordable price and maybe even lower.
Yeah.
It's going to disrupt the market. And I think that's good, because, I think consumers and retailers are constantly getting screwed. And I know a lot of retailers consumers kind of look at retailers and go, oh, you guys are charging so much. Now, for my stuff, there's no justification for overcharging. We don't have programs where you got to buy this to get that or any of that stuff. But there are brands that do that. And so all of a sudden somebody's like had to give away all this product just to get a bottle or two. And then now all of a sudden they're looking at profits and like, was that worth it? And, but I don't know. I just think that it's like, it's cool to the bourbon community has been great for us. And, and so, like, it's funny because, like, sometimes I'll do Zooms or whatever. And people are like, what can we do to support your brand? I'm like, you guys have done it. You've already done it. Now it's my turn to make sure you guys are getting what you want and helping you out. And I think having a product like Uncut the Younger achieves that, to where, like, hey, you want a daily cast strength bourbon that isn't going to, not only not going to break the bank, but shit, retails for, maybe $10 more than a $7.50 of Jack.
Yeah.
Here you go, and hopefully it's good. I mean, I try to make it. Let's see.
Yeah, no, without a doubt, this is a quality bourbon, and outside of like, it's really well made, and outside of like a Maker's Mark cast strength or a Wild Turkey rare breed, there's not anything else in that $40-ish price range that are cast strength and actually offer a more interesting experience than some of the low ABV stuff that you usually find in that price range. So definitely a place in the market for this, and especially when you start rolling it out, I'm expecting it to really be a heavy hitter.
Yeah, and then we're not even in bars or restaurants yet.
Yeah.
So when you start, because there just isn't enough product, and so once we can start getting the bars and restaurants, if you're a bar and you do quality cocktails, to have something like this, I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah. Some people are asking if you're going to be in New York City next month.
I am going to be in New York City. I was originally supposed to be there for a week, but now it's turned into, I started up at Lake Placid and moved my way down. So I think I'll only be in New York City for 2 days or something like that.
All
right. Well, I live right outside of New York City. If I happen to cross your path as you travel down north, then I'll try.
Where area are you in?
I'm just north of the city in Westchester County, so in Ossipee, New York.
Chester. I'll be in, I believe, 2 stores in Westchester.
Oh, well, then it's a no-brainer to stop by. Do you have a list of places you're going to be? Is that somewhere we can find that?
No, because I can't publish stuff like that. It's unfair advertising for retailers.
Oh,
so stupid.
Yeah, I don't understand.
It's up to the retailer to promote the events. I can't do anything.
All right. Well, I'll have to reach out to some retailers in the Westchester County area, see if I can find that information. But yeah, I'll definitely try to meet up with you, or at least stop by the store that you're at when you're in Westchester County.
Oh, my screen just got. Let's see. Oh, everything's going by.
Yeah, a lot of people are joining and
Right
some
on.
comments. So it's flying by right now.
That's cool.
Yeah. No,
Yeah, so
very
I'm
cool.
very happy with this. I really, it was funny too, because my business partner, he's in the film business now, but he was an attorney. He was an attorney on Wall Street,
Hmm.
and he still has a lot of contacts from Wall Street. And he's was always talking about the economy and what was coming.
Hmm.
And even before I did straight, but when I did he was talking about this stuff like a year and a half ago, and I was kind of thinking about doing Uncut the Younger. Originally, the sort of the genesis of it was I tried a straight before I proofed it down.
Yeah.
And this was way back in 2020. And I was like, oh man, this would be a cool rare and limited. Because I did not know that the rare and limiteds were just supposed to be rare and limited.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, hey, I'm going to release a 5-year that's supposed to retail for like, I don't know, $48.
Yeah.
Like that. When I did the only 5-year, I was like, everybody can get this one. It's so cheap. And then when that was supposed to come out, we were only in like 2 states, and then by the time we finally got label approval, we were in like 13 states, and that stuff sells for like crazy money.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, I don't think I'm going to do a cast strength version of a 4-year as a as a rare and limited. I mean, that's why I gave away all the special batch, small batch, because that has more 4-year than a normal small batch, and I was like, that's going to sell for too much. I'll just give it away, whatever, or do charity stuff
Yeah.
with it. And so then when I was informed that these amber bottles were going to be available, I was like, oh, I know exactly what to do with that. And so, and
Yeah.
then all of a sudden I was like, wow, I think this is really going to be good, because every time there's an economic downturn, my 20 years in the bar business has taught me that premium products take a hit. And
Hmm.
so it sure would be nice to be prepared and have an affordable, because a lot of people have acquired a taste for cast strength bourbons. You
Yeah.
got to realize in 2017 when we came with Uncut Unfiltered, there was like 3 or 4,
Hmm.
like, and they all said the same thing. Please enjoy this with some spring water. It's just a starting point for the consumer,
Yeah.
And now there's tons of them, and people really like them. And so I was like, hey, maybe if things get tough, it'll be nice to have an affordable one.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know when I first heard about the Smoke Wagon Uncut Unfiltered, it was still a hard to find whiskey because it took a little bit of time for distribution to kind of get out there. But now you see it on most reasonable liquor stores, or a liquor store worth going into will typically have Smoke Wagon in it.
Well, a lot of that was fortunately finding a good online partner,
Yeah.
because we will send a lot to go online, and if anybody's in a state that it can get shipped to, and they go to
Yeah.
their retailer and it's for a lot of money, like, hey, you know what? Just buy it online every month. So
Yeah. Absolutely. And
Did you speaking of the bottles, did you design these bottles, bottle design, because it's very unique in the whiskey world. You don't see a lot of bottles like this.
yeah, it all came from the vodka bottle.
okay.
I wanted to we got permission from United States Treasury to do a replica of the Morgan Silver Dollar. And
Yeah.
I wanted it here, and I wanted this shaped bottle. I love this shaped bottle. I know people at home aren't always the biggest fan of the tall bottle because they
Yeah.
put it on their shelf.
Yeah.
But in bars and liquor stores, this is what you want, baby.
Yeah.
This is the shape. This fits in every speed rail in a bar. It doesn't take up a lot of space on a back bar, and it doesn't take up a lot of space on a shelf. And they were like, you got to do flat bottles. Like, flat bottles get turned sideways. No one's going to see it. So I had to build the bottle on a 3D program and show them how if I did these bumpers above and below the label and recess the coin a certain amount, then it wouldn't be a contact point on the assembly line.
Yeah.
And so yeah. And so when I was doing it, that's when I put the desert sage on it and everything. And
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's really cool. And I mean, if it doesn't fit on our shelves, that just means we have to leave it out in the open more, and we're going to be drinking it more. So, that's the little side benefit. More people will consume it that way. And where did you come up with the name Smoke Wagon? What was the thought behind? Were there any other names in consideration?
there were no other names really in consideration.
Mhm.
I mean, I shouldn't say that. The entire Old West dictionary of slang for guns and alcohol was in consideration because the store was silver dollar, and so the Morgan was the currency of the Old West.
Mm-hmm.
And me coming from the East Coast, all of my love of the desert and this area is all like sort of the history of the West and the Homestead Act and everything, and how water dictates everything, and so that's what I love about living here. And so for the bourbon, we want to be Old West as well. And just Smoke Wagon, when I got the Smoke Wagon, I could picture the logo. I was like, oh man, I got this logo. And then it's Old West slang for the Colt single action armor revolver, the gun that won the West. So everybody had Morgans in their pocket, which was silver dollar, and a Colt on their hip. So it was like, oh, that and the vodka kind of go side by side. They're sort of a family. So that, and my business, it was funny too, because my business partner, when I told him, he recited the line from Tombstone. I was like, oh shit, maybe it's not as like obscure as I think, So
yeah, and I think whiskey and the Old West go hand in hand together. I mean, it's such, you think of any of the old Western movies, go into a bar through the double doors and you sit down and you grab a whiskey. So the imagery is great, and it definitely helps enhance the image.
I almost died drinking coffee. Better have some bourbon to
you gotta drink down the bourbon, help with that cough there.
So the premium product of your core range is the Uncut, Unfiltered version.
Yes.
And so do you spend most of your time focusing on this one, or like how does this one kind of rank in your?
For sure, and that's another reason why I really like Uncut the Younger, and even to some degree Straight, because those are the volume movers, right? And they're still good quality, and so there's no pressure on this or small batch.
Yeah.
Look, if we got to push, which I have pushed the bottling of Uncut because I just could not get it right with the barrels we had on hand.
Yeah.
And so I always want to be able to take my time with this. I always want it to be perfect. I want everything to be perfect. I mean, obviously, it's a pretty intricate with this because I'll use everything we have.
Yeah.
And so, it's cool. It changes with the seasons to some degree. I haven't had this one out of the bottle yet.
Yeah, and I've got an older batch on my shelf that I'll have to compare with this one. But just on the nose, you can just tell this one has a lot of character. It's easy to nose, not too spicy. I mean, it's really just a very nice sniffer for sure.
They're asking which batch. I've got 159
G as in golf.
Okay,
yeah.
159 G.
Yeah. So these we did when I was out of town in New York.
Okay.
And we had to figure out how to do like 7 or 8 batches, before I left. And so when we move, we'll have bigger tanks. Right now, we can only use 350-gallon tanks because we don't have an EPA containment system.
Yeah.
And so that is the biggest size tank I can use. And then now we have so much inventory that, we'll have 12 or 13. It's got another call. We'll have 12 or 13 tanks that actually that was that was Lindsay, and she knows I'm doing a live. I wonder give me 1 second.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Do you need to go? Yeah, go ahead.
I might.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, I'll be right. Yeah, so I started doing the letters because now like an uncut batch can be like 10 or 13 tanks. And so sometimes, we'll do like 4 batches using the same exact blend.
Yeah.
And so I kind of felt weird calling each one a separate batch. I mean, sometimes there is some variation because like legally they're separate batches. That's how I reported the federal government. Like, so it's like, I can't call them all the same batch. It's not. Yeah. It's not. It's illegal. And So I felt, hey, if we start giving them these letters, then people kind of know it's the same blend as the one before. And there's a chemical reaction. You're not adding water. So there's always going to be some I shouldn't say always, but a lot of time there's some variation.
Yeah.
But for the most of the time, they're pretty similar one to the next. And so this is the craziest one because we had to figure out how to do so many while I was out of town. But damn, it's good.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, as a Scotch drinker, this is what makes me drink bourbon, is stuff like this, because this one adds that depth and character to it. It's a little bit more complex than you'd expect in most bourbons, and this is a really well-made, well-blended bourbon. So, congratulations for this one.
But yeah, these summertime batches are just beautiful.
Yeah.
They're some of my favorite, And it's just funny because like people talk about like, oh, the older ones. I'm like, which one? It's always the older ones.
Yeah.
So it was like when we were in the 20s, it was like the older ones.
Mm-hmm.
Like what older ones? The ones where it was just 8-year and 4-year.
Yeah.
Those? You think those were better? And then now that we're into like, then it was like when we're in it's like it's won a double gold every year.
Yeah.
So and then like so when they were in the 40s, it was like it was the older ones. Like which older ones? The 20s when you said it was the older.
Yeah.
So it's just always like.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that's very common in the whiskey world. There's always that nostalgia and that yearning for the past and older batches. I mean, you see that all over Scotch whiskey, where the batch from 2001 was the best ever, and then if you actually did a blind taste test between the old versus the new, you probably would find not much of a difference, or some people would prefer the newer stuff. So it is but whiskey itself is not just necessarily the liquid you're drinking. There is a romance to it. There is a story behind it that enhances it. So if you have a nostalgic for the 2017 Uncut Unfiltered, nothing's going to live up to that, unfortunately.
First,
yeah,
I'm nostalgic for it. I like this one better though.
Yeah, there you go. That's a good way to split the two. It's gotten better, but
those are crazy times, man.
Yeah,
I'm sure in today's market, if there was a 2017 batch of the Uncut Unfiltered, it would sell for an unseen amount of money. It'd be a collector's item at this point.
Yeah, I've seen it, and it's funny too because people are like, "I have an ABV, but it doesn't really match up with what you have online." I'm like, "Well, I didn't really expect this." And a lot of those, I was doing it myself.
Yeah.
And so, like, I do 3 batches and be like, "Oh shit, I got to do my federal reporting."
Yeah.
And like, oh no, like, did I get it? So I mean, they just care like how many proof gallons I was excising out of my bonded warehouse and what I owed tax on, And so I didn't think that one day somebody would want my 3rd batch, or I had no idea.
Yeah, you were just kind of going with the flow and seeing where it took you, and clearly it's kind of. I'm assuming it's exceeded your expectations of what you expected.
Oh, absolutely. It's crazy. It's awesome, man. And it's still fun. That's the important thing for me.
Yeah.
People are always like, oh, like how big do you want to get? I'm like, because there is no pressure to grow.
Mm-hmm.
It's like once we kind of get through like where we had to sort of, I generally don't like to buy aged juice, but we've had to buy a lot of aged juice. We bought all those ryes. We're doing this expansion and all these things. But once we get through that and we're just back to having our monthly costs be new fills, it's like, it's easy street. And so there's no investors, there's no equity partners, there's no nothing. And so we just do whatever we want. And so when people are like, so yeah, I want to do more, mainly because look, it's like, it gets ridiculous where we're not in every state and nobody can get it. And I want everybody to get everything. Yeah. And so that's more of an incentive than like, well, we need more money, or whatever. Yeah. But, if it's not fun, then scale back but right now it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I love that messaging too. Like you love your whiskey, you love what you're doing, and you want to share that with everybody. You're not looking necessarily to get filthy rich or greedy. You just want you have a core range with 4 core whiskeys. All of them are in great price ranges for what they are, and you want them to be accessible to everybody. And that's the way that bourbon and all whiskeys really should be.
Yeah, and look, I mean that's why the only rare and limiteds we've done are the ones that I planned for 3 years ago.
Yeah.
where I took these barrels and set them aside. I really haven't done a creative one because the reward for me is people drinking them and going,
Yeah.
wow, that was cool. Thanks for making that. It's
Yeah.
not, hey, I'm never going to open this and see if it's worth more money. You know, that doesn't really,
Yeah,
it
so
bums
you're
me
not
out more than, you know, people are like, oh, is that when you knew you made it, when some bottle sold for something? And I said, no, it's when straight became allocated,
yeah.
because there's people drinking straight don't even know who the fuck I am. And I know
Yeah.
that for a fact, because I'll have friends that'll be like, oh, I was at somebody's house in this state, and I was like, oh, I'm friends with Aaron. And they're like, who? Who's that? Like the guy in the cowboy hat, the Smoke Wagon guy, like, I don't know who that is. I just
Yeah.
went to the liquor store, and they said this was good, and I tried it, and I really like it for the price. And so I buy it every week, you know?
Yeah.
And that's where I want to be.
Oh yeah.
That's like, I mean, are you kidding me? That's like the dream. And so yeah, it's really cool. And so I appreciate everybody, you know.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, so you're not looking to have your face on the side of the bottle being sold next to Pappy Van Winkle. You know, that's not the ultimate goal.
I don't want my face on the bottle. I want people to buy it.
Good, that's a good marketing tactic. You're thinking.
Try to make the bottle as desirable as possible, so we keep my face off of it.
All right, so I've got a few questions here. Just kind of you know, it's getting late, so some wrap up questions. Do you have a single favorite bottle of all the ones you bottled? Is there one that stands out to you more than the rest?
Flavor profile wise, I think is what they mean, probably.
Yeah, I guess the best that you've made in terms of the drinking experience.
For me, I would say it's WC Elevator Batch. That was sort of like my dream uncut, unfiltered, that
Yeah.
like where I wasn't constrained by price. I could just do whatever I wanted. And and then, but man, I can't remember what barrel number it was.
Hmm.
I think it was barrel 6,000.
Yeah.
And that was like this, I did not want to sell that barrel, but
Yeah.
these guys talked me into it. And that was like, I love that barrel so much.
Yeah. No, that's great. If you weren't working at Smoke Wagon, or the, yeah, what would you be doing if you weren't doing this?
Fuck. I don't know. I mean, all my decisions were to get out of the bar business and do this,
Yeah.
so I could be creative all the time. You know, that was the main goal. Is like once I wasn't partying, I just was so bored intellectually, because all I was doing was managing stuff,
Yeah.
and I wanted to do something where again, like going back to small batch, you're like, oh, just put 8 year in a bottle. I was like, that's not creative. The whole reason I'm trying to do this is so that I'm being challenged all the time.
Yeah.
Exotic dancer. Oh man, be living in the gutter.
Yeah, you would really
Moving
be
out of my
banned from
car if
Instagram
I
with
was
that.
exotic dancer. I don't know. You know, I sort of everything. I never really thought about that. I mean, there's things I like to do, but you know, I'm too old now. Race
Well,
cars or race motorcycles. I don't think I'd be competitive. I don't think I'd have the.
Well, we'll say instead of bottling MGP bourbon, you'd be bottling Scotch whiskey from Scotland. So you'd be flying out there, tasting all the whiskeys out there. And oh yeah, that'd be pretty cool. That would be pretty cool. All right, well, a similar line of thought. What's something that you haven't done in your life that you wish you could do? I know you weren't expecting these questions. These are not.
No, these are
Whiskey
great.
really.
Honestly, the thing I think about all the time is having enough money to join Spring Mountain. What is it? The Motorsports Country Club thing.
Yeah.
And buying vintage race cars and driving vintage race cars on the track. That is something that I totally have never done and want to do for sure. Or even one of those Wolfs, those little Wolf race cars, the turbo goes like 0 to 60 in 1.9 seconds. Like all these guys are like, oh, I had a Porsche GT3 and I had this and I had that. And then I bought the Wolf, and it looks like a Formula One car, you know?
Yeah.
And man, I would love to drive one of those on the track. That'd be fucking awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome. I know you you ride your motorcycle a lot. I see that on your other Instagram accounts.
Love
Pretty
it.
cool.
It's funny because I didn't do it for a really long time. You know, I used to ride up in Angeles Crest all the time. It's funny because like I was totally broke.
Yeah.
I was totally broke, and I bought an MV Agusta F4 SPR in 2004, which is the most expensive motorcycle made at the time.
Yeah.
And I got a loan from Capital One, and I was so broke that I bought like they're, what do you want? I was like, when I called them, I was like, what's the bike with tax? And they told me, and I was like, I don't have any leathers because I was only had vintage bikes, not because vintage bikes used to be cheap.
Yeah.
And they weren't collectible back then. Nobody wanted them, and so like I was like, oh, I bought leathers and a helmet and boots and gloves and everything with my Capital One loan, and I just God, I used to go ripping up Angeles Crest all the time, and then like I bought an MV Agusta Brutality 910R, I think it was in 2007, and I used to, when I had my one bar, I used to ride like 4 or 5 times a week.
Yeah.
And I just loved it, and I've really gotten back into it. The distillery, we're finally supposed to submit for permits this week, so I'm told 5 months because we had to give the health department a projected opening date, and that's what we gave them.
And this is for a bigger space for your.
We bought 4.5 acre and a much nicer location as well.
Oh, nice. And do you plan on having any sort of like tourist attraction there? Some reason to?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, strippers with machine guns.
that will that's definitely a unique appeal in the whiskey tour industry. So that'll be your niche in the market. That's pretty cool though. I went to Springbank Distillery a month and a half ago, and one of the coolest parts about that was they had the blending experience. So you could actually go into the room, they give you 6 cast strength Springbanks, and you can just play around with the ratios and blend your own bottle. So which is similar to how you make a lot of your bourbon. So I thought that was a really cool experience.
Yeah, it's funny because I used to, when I used to have to like do more sales stuff, and we were dealing with all the sales reps. We have been trying to get the sales reps behind the brand here in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, I don't even know if they are behind the brand, because this is such a unique market with the casinos and everything and all the big brand. It's very easy for sales reps here. They just walk in and get these orders for like 20 pallets or whatever. But I would measure out the blends so that they could try each one and be like, oh, it's not very good, and then blend it and have a finished product. And then when I finally hired a brand ambassador, he was like, don't do that. I was like, well, I want them to have a good bottle to take home. He's like, no. They need to understand how fucking hard it is. Like, because you make it seem like, oh, you just do beep, bop, boop, and then you have this great product. Let them do it themselves. And so I started letting them do it themselves, and he was right. Nobody ever got anything they really liked, but they're, so it was, but yeah. So it's tough because when you have people coming by and they do their own blend, you kind of want them to leave with something they like, but at the same time,
Yeah, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. All right, I got 2 more questions for you, and then I'll let you go for the night. This one's gonna be random. What's your favorite action film?
Man, my favorite action film, probably the original Predator.
Oh, nice. That is a fantastic movie. Yeah, just was actually on the flight. I went on a flight to Oregon a couple of weeks ago, and that was the movie I watched on the airplane. It's tough to beat those classic Arnold Schwarzenegger movies.
And it doesn't seem dated when you watch it.
No, not at all. It still stands the test of time.
Like, I used to love RoboCop, and man, you try to go back and watch RoboCop, and it's just like, oh, it's still pretty good though.
Yeah, of course. But
Predator is awesome. I mean, obviously, the obvious one, because it's supposed to be the most perfect movie ever made, is Die Hard.
Yeah, that one, when I ask that, that's probably the most popular answer I get is Die Hard.
Yeah.
That's really the answer. I was actually expecting some sort of like car movie, like Ford versus Ferrari or something like that.
See, Ford versus Ferrari is bullshit. I know Peter Brock. And Peter Brock did everything, and Shelby didn't do shit. And Peter Brock is a genius. Peter Brock is like the smartest guy in the world.
Yeah.
And he created the Daytona by reading a German book on aerodynamics, and he didn't even understand it, but he just understood the formula. And so even like when he did the C2 Corvette, and he just worked at GM, and when he designed it, it was all based on aerodynamics.
Yeah.
And you know, they were like, oh well, it doesn't look right, and so they changed it, and so it wasn't as stable as when he did it. And even, you know, it's funny now because Shelby is coming out with the Daytona the way Shelby wanted.
Yeah.
No, that is the way Peter Brock designed it.
Yeah.
And Shelby said, it's ugly, I don't like it. And he's like, yeah, but this is the way that it makes sense as a race car.
Yeah.
And so Shelby's like, no, take the thing, take the spoiler off and take the. And so it was the winning through Daytona is what got Ford's attention, Peter Brock's car. And
Yeah.
that was the car that like did really well at Le Mans. And then they switched to the GT40 because that was like Shelby's deal, and he didn't want it to be Peter Brock's deal. So that's
so
the real story, everyone, and you learned something today.
Yeah, so you're saying Hollywood took some liberties and boosting up Shelby a little bit.
Yeah, and by the way, what's the quote? You know, something happens at $7,000. What the fuck are they talking about? $7,000 in which gear? What motor? I don't have a motor that spins at $7,000 and it's like, oh, I'm in a magical place. Not an American car. It'll blow up at $7,000. I mean, even like the new flat cam Z06 C8. Finally, they got something that like spins to $7,000. Like, what is that quote even talking about?
Yeah, all right. Well, now I know why you didn't pick a car movie, because you'll be able to call out all the BS on those films. So it's clear that Predator is definitely the right choice for sure.
Do I have a favorite batch of Uncut Unfiltered? I don't know, 159G that we just had is pretty fucking good, man.
Yeah, that was really good. But yeah, out of 159 batches, it's probably tough to select just one.
I will tell you one thing, though. I'll tell you one thing. Summertime batches are good in winter. Wintertime batches are not good in the summer. At least not here.
Yeah.
They are too... They're just too heavy and too oaky, and when the juice heats up in the glass and the way it changes sitting outside when it's like 90 degrees, I do not ever drink wintertime batches in the summer. And even like I tried to catch up, you know, because I had a whole period. I had like sinus surgery, and I couldn't drink, and so that's why I got really behind, and I tried doing like the December and January batches. Starting in like May or whatever, I was like, no, I'm not doing this.
Yeah.
Well, unless you're, I guess you could go inside and really blast the AC, get it really cold inside, and then maybe.
I guess that's the thing for me. I like sitting outside with a cigar when I'm having them.
Yeah.
I guess I'm being a baby. I could sit inside.
Well, you know,
but then it's not. Yeah. But doing it, just sitting inside, and like doing it for just to do it, that's not fun. So.
Yeah,
probably why.
Yeah, you need to. You like to be outside for sure. And you know, you've got 159 batches here. You could do like a March Madness blind tasting of all your batches to find the one supreme of the group.
Let me tell you something. You know, speaking of these 150 going to G, I think we had 13 or 14 tanks.
Yeah.
Right. Sampling 14 tanks to figure out how to do the batch. And then to do the blend, oh my, that fried my palate for sure. And when I say fried, I mean like physically, like it started to get tender, and it's not just like I couldn't taste anything. Like I got blisters once. I did so many barrel. I was trying to go through like all these barrels back in the day, and they're all like over 120 proof, and I was like,
jeez,
I won't do that again.
Yeah, that's you definitely have to pace yourself when you're blending and testing, because I can imagine you're going to get palate wear out pretty quickly. All right, my last question for you, and I'll get you out of here on this. If you had to share a dram of your bourbon with 4 famous people, dead or alive, who are you picking?
4 famous people?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
And I only say that because that's, you know, people would recognize who they are who are watching. But I guess they don't have to be if you really have somebody that wouldn't be as well.
Well, let's take some famous cigar and bourbon drinkers. I guess Mark Twain, right?
Oh, yeah.
He loves bourbon and cigars.
Yep.
Well, not really Hemingway. Hemingway, he drank rum. Maybe Grant, didn't he smoke so many cigars? He did. He got cancer, so we'll throw Grant in there.
That's a good. That's a good first ad.
Let's see who else. I can't really think of any movie stars.
Well, Schwarzenegger likes cigars at least. I don't think he's a whiskey drinker.
Yeah,
though.
but he lost me during that whole fuck your freedom rant. So he can't come over. Sorry, Arnold.
Yeah.
Let's Oh man, this is a tough one. I'm spending too much time. We're gonna lose the crowd. We're gonna lose it.
No, don't worry
we're
about
down to 36. Let's see. Who else? God, it's like when you get put under pressure. It's funny. Like you see these like people on the street asking questions, and now I wonder if I would be an idiot on the street. Like I wouldn't be able to think of anything, even if it was answers that I knew.
Yeah, you're put on the spot and you're not expecting the question, so your brain just kind of fails on you. And I apologize. I did not prep you beforehand.
So
I know I've only got two. We got two more to go. We can do it. We can do it together. It was a dead or alive or dead.
You can be dead or alive, so they don't have to be.
You know what? I'll tell you who's kind of famous. Who I haven't talked to in a long time, but it would be curious to see what he thinks of everything I'm doing now. Would be Steve Beal. Steve Beal. I met. He actually requested to meet me way back in 2017 when I first got started because he was a judge in San Francisco, and he was like, "Man, Uncut and Filtered, that's really something special." So, so Steve Beal for sure. Carol Shelby, no, he can't come over. That guy's not. Peter Brock's still alive though, which is crazy. Peter Brock's like 82, man. This dude's like crushing it.
Yeah,
he's like he just did like two. He did with an English company. They're doing an electric car based on his original C2 drawings that he have. Nick Cage. Actually, this is better. Just having people throw out random suggestions is actually better than anybody I could think of.
Nick Cage would definitely be an entertaining guest, that's for sure.
My business partner knows Nick Cage from Con Air.
Oh, really? That's really cool.
Jonathan wrote Con Air.
He wrote it?
Well, he came in and rewrote it, but he didn't get like he didn't get credit for it, I don't think. But he got executive producer credit. We only got Harpo Marx. Man, I don't even know if like 3/4 of the people on here know who Harpo Marx is anymore.
No.
Who else would be a good?
I mean, you got I don't know, Winston Churchill. He was cigar and scotch. Close.
How about George Patton?
Oh, there you go. Yeah,
we could talk about all his past lives and everything. We did it.
Yeah, that's a great one. So that's it. It was a struggle to get there, but we got the full.
Sorry, everybody. We lost like 10 people getting through all that. I'm sorry.
Well, once we stopped talking about the whiskey, that's when they were like, "All right, I'm done here. This is whiskey only, not who you drink it with." But anyways, Aaron, I'm going to let you go for the night. I want to thank you again for joining me here. I had a great time sharing these drams with you. I love them all.
Thank you, everyone that joined. I really appreciate it. Hope you guys had a good time.
Yeah, thanks everybody who's still sticking around watching this. And Aaron, when you come out to the New York area, hopefully I'll be around and I can stop by one of the stores you're at and we can chat
in person.
Right on. Looking forward to it.
All right, sounds good. I'll talk to you later.
All right, have a good night.
You too. Bye.